Okay, if formulas. So Excel has a pretty cool tool which is called if formulas. And looking at the data on the left, you can see dates. In the beginning of July, it's 4 dates. Then you see merchants, 4 different ones. And they all cost on each day revenue. And for that, they will get a commission. So now you will learn how we can use if functions to calculate that. So to calculate the commission, and let's say we in a company pay out 20% when a merchant makes sales over $1,000, and we pay out 10% if a merchant makes sales then less than $1,000. So let's define here threshold for premium commission, and let's say that's 1,000, and then let's say basic commission and premium commission, and that's, let's say, 10%. Premium commission is 20%. So now what we want to do is apply that formula here. So if $750 is bigger than $1,000, and here basically it makes sense to press F4, which is for fixing that exact formula. So when we autofill the formula, then the K21 will remain as it is and won't change automatically. So if the 750 is bigger than the threshold value, then actually we want to pay out the revenue times 20%, and that needs again to be fixed. That if it does not change when we autofill it, and if it's less than 750, actually we want to pay 750 times 10% F4, right? So in that case, it's less than $1,000, and the merchant receives as a commission then the 10%. If we autofill that now, then you see that here he received 20%. Here actually it's 10% because it's bigger than 1,000 and not bigger and equal than 1,000. And here again it's 20%. So actually we want to give that commission bigger, equal that kind of value. So doing that, you can see now that here the commission actually doubled, because the 1,000 is exactly 1,000 and above. Okay. So there might be another good idea, which is summing up the commissions by day. So that we can do, for example, here we want to do that by day for the total commission and also on the merchant level. So what we do here is actually a SUMIF function, and the range for that is here. The criteria is the date, and what we want to sum up is the commission. So on the 1st of July, the total commission that was paid out is 170. Is that true? Yes, you can see here the sum is 170. That's true. So if we now do the autofill, then you can see that actually the border was copied, which I don't want. So I want to fill without the formatting. So now it looks nice again. 320, 2nd of July. Let's check that. 2nd of July, it's 320. 3rd is 480. It is 480. So that works pretty good. Now let's only sum it up if like merchant 1 got a commission. In that case, we need another criteria, and the formula for that is SUMIFs. And now actually we have to first put in what we want to sum up. The sum is the commission. Our first criteria is actually the range that we need now, which is here. And the criteria is the date here. And now our second criteria range is the merchant. And we want that only the merchant one basically gets summed up. So if you do that now, it's 75 for the merchant 1. Looking here, there is actually only merchant 1 on the 1st of July doing one sale with a commission of 75. That's exactly the amount that you can find here. So what makes sense now is actually for I2 to fix that and to fix the number only. So I press F4 twice so that when I copy the formula now down, and I don't want to fill the formatting, that the I2 stays as it is. 2nd of July, there is merchant 1 doing 30, and there's another sale on the 2nd of July for merchant 1 is 40, so it's 70. That works pretty good. So what I can do now is I can also actually drag that to the right, and what I can see is that it didn't really work. So let's see what happens. That's always also something good. As you can see, like Excel now automatically changed the formulas completely, which doesn't make sense. So actually we have to fix more here. Yeah? The commission here obviously stays as it is. So we fix that with F4. A3 actually also remains as it is. G3 also remains as it is, but not on the only on the column, not on the row. So I press F4 3 times, and B3 to B37 is the merchant that we can also fix. And now press enter. If I pull that down now without formatting and now pull it over to the right, then you can see now it works. And if you now really took care of what I just did, then you can see that actually here the sum if, as it was not fixed with the dollars by pressing F4, you can see that the formula and the range was moved down by 1. Yeah? So you can see now it's 1 below the range, and it starts one behind the actual data. Yeah? So what we need to do here is to fix that, to also fix the range. G3 is basically alright. It can stay as it is, and also the commission we need to fix. And we do another autofill without formatting. Now it's correct. These are now the commissions on a total basis and then broken down on merchant. So the next thing that we want to find out is how many orders per merchant per day were made, and also how many orders per day were made. Yeah? So number of sales. Let's call it here total, not commission, but total sales, and it's an amount, so number. And what we want to do here is then use the count function on the states, and the criteria is actually this one. And what we obviously need to do is lock the range again by pressing F4 twice, and then we know that without formatting we made on the 3rd of July 7 sales, Is that true? 3rd of July, count is 7. Yeah, so that's all right. Now on a merchant level, it's pretty similar to the sum ifs. We work with count ifs. Criteria range is the dates and the date here and the merchants and the merchant here. So again, now with the F4s, we need to fix that. Obviously, G9 should go down, but not to the right. So we have to fix the column, but not the row. So press F4 3 times, fully fixing the range. I8 is the merchant. Here we want to move or be able to automatically change the column, but not the row. So we press F4 twice, like that. So merchant 1 made one sale on the 1st of July, which is true. Auto fill down, no formatting, thank you. To the right, no formatting, thank you. Now actually the sum of these numbers should also be the sum of this one here. As you can see, this is 4, this is 5, this is 7, and this is 9. It already looks good. Now let's do a final test. Merchant 1 on the 4th of July. Merchant 1 first time. Merchant 1 second time. Merchant 1 third time. Yeah, so it works. Average commission by day and by merchant. So here we use a little trick. We copy the sum ifs into here. Now we have to check if the formula was changed properly, and what you can see is this one is correct, this one is correct, this one is correct. So this one looks pretty good. Now also look for the merchant formulas. Correct, 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 correct. This one is not correct, so let's move that down. So I want to have this merchant here. Now, no formatting, thank you. Thanks. Now I have the right formula, but still it's sum. And what we can do now is, because average if and average ifs is what we want to have right now, we press Command F for find and replace. We go to replace, and we want to change sum if to average if, and we want to, that's already it, or also the ifs are changed, so we can close. Average if now you can see, and average ifs. So that looks a little bit nasty with all these kind of decimals. So we go down to, yeah, this one actually looks pretty good, so without decimal. So let's make a cross check. Total commission on the 4th of July is 62. 4th of July, total commission is 62. That's also correct. Now let's say 3rd of July, merchant 1. 3rd of July, merchant 1 is 35. That's pretty easy because there's only one value. Let's go again for merchant 1 on the 4th. It's 43. 90 here, and 30 and 10 is on average 43. So that works. So count and count A. For what do we need count? For example, if you want to count how many product IDs do we have? In that case, you could say count. And you want to count that here. It's 67 IDs. Yeah. So if there will be less, then it would be 66. So it's counting the IDs. What is interesting, if you count the products, it tells you 0. If you count the other columns again, it's always 67. So what is actually how does Excel count? Excel counts numbers, and even 0 is a number. So if I remove the 0 here, there will be 66. Yeah? So every empty cell basically is not counted. Everything that is filled is counted, but it has to be a number. If it's text like here, it's not getting counted. So if you want to count text, then there's something called count A, or I call it count anything. And as this is a number is also part of anything, it's also 67, like everything here. But as you can see right now, that the text is actually now counted, and it says 67. Yeah. To prove you what I mean, if I type in here number, just for the sake of making it clear, you can see that the count formula now counts a number, and they say there's one number, which is 555, and the count A still says there's 67 filled cells. If I empty one, there's still one number, and now 66 filled cells. So you can use that to count basically anything in terms of rows, columns, and whatever you want to count. Okay, so today and now function. I prepared a small action protocol here where you can see actions like meet with Bill to discuss Q3 sales numbers, who does it, Carl does it, with whom, with Bill obviously, and the due date is 1st of July, and the status is open, it's not yet done. Then send a presentation afterwards to management with the updated numbers. Let's make it a little bit bigger here, like that. Then ask for feedback 3 days later, and then implement that feedback starting on the day of asking for feedback, and then finishing it 1 week later, the latest. It's all open. So how can we use the today function and the now function to further polish that? First of all, today basically gives you the current date. Here I use some US format, then it's easier for everyone to understand. Actually, another way to do it, just to show you, by going back, actually selecting this format, use the painter, could have been faster, no? So that is today, and now is now. Wing wing. That actually includes the time. Yeah. For the sake of simplicity, I will go on with the today function, but the now is then even more precise if you also need to plan within hours. But for the sake of simplicity, now let's continue with the pure today function. What we want to do is actually the following. We want to find out of this kind of due dates, what is kind of like overdue. Yeah? And let's come up here with another column. Let's say another column in here, it makes it easier, and we call it alert. And then we can say, for example, if Joule for this date is smaller than today, and that we need to put in a force, then say overdue, otherwise nothing. So we are overdue. That is not surprising, and we are overdue on all these kind of tasks. However, if let's say that would be 1 week longer, so to the 19th, then we would not be overdue, as you can see here. So that's actually pretty cool. And also, if you want to make it even more precise, you could say days left, and you can say this minus this, and then obviously it's a number. It's 15 days overdue. So as it should be actually a negative number, we do the other way around. So J3 minus J8 is minus 15. Make it smaller, push it down without formatting. So what was the mistake? Why doesn't it work? Because we did not fix the cell with the F4 key, which we can do now. And then you can see that without formatting, but in general, that here we have 3 days left, and on the others we are actually 15 days overdue, 14 and 11. Here are 3 days left. You can also do here another if function, for example, if j minus 3 smaller, and put that in brackets now, smaller 0, then don't show it, otherwise do j3 minus j8, f4. So here in that case we only see it when it's actually not negative. So days left is 3, the others are already overdue. Alright, so math formulas is already next chapter. So what I will do is I will highlight the next chapter, de-highlight this one, and what we will cover actually in this chapter are these kind of formulas. So plus, minus, divide, multiply, sum, average, round, sum, product, min, max, rank. And we will now go one by one through the formulas. Plus is actually the simplest. Don't even have to show that. For example, this plus this is 11. Yeah? So 2 plus 9 is 11. Minus 6 minus 12 is minus 6. Divide 10 divided by 29. Here maybe in terms of formatting, go for maybe double digit. Multiply, that's it. To sum something up, let's say for example, doesn't make any sense now, but let's sum this up. Then it's 28. The command is, the formula is sum. If you include text, for example, then it's getting ignored basically. Okay. So then you can of course also use average to get like, that actually makes sense. Here, let's say, and here I do again the freeze panes now, that you can still see the first column and the first row. Let's say you wanna find out what the average shop price is. Then we basically mark the area from the second cell to the 41st cell, and then you can see that the average is around 18.68 or 75 if you want to be specific dollars. That's the average. So what question could also be, what's the minimum price in the shop? Minimum price is min, and then Same here. It's F2 to F41, which is minimum is 2, yeah? And maximum also quite easy. Same thing here. 65. Yeah. If you don't work with tables, what we'll do later, but if you want to work with names here, you can also do, and it's also pretty cool to get used to working with names. Actually, it's say this, for example, could be shop prices. You say okay, and if you say then here, for example, maximum of shop prices, it will tell you. Okay, for this lecture I continue in Excel 2010 because Excel 2013 crashed now a couple of times. But to finish that, actually, so you can also work with names here. You can, for example, say you want to define a name here. It's the shop price, and let's say you want to find out what the maximum of the shop price is. That's 65. Yeah. So what we did till now is actually the basic operators, and we did min max. Next is round. So round is just important to understand. If you, for example, have a number like this, and let's say you round that number by 2 digits, 3.15, or showing that like that, then you can see it rounded by the second digit behind the decimal. If you actually now only show 2 decimals, then the numbers look the same. But if you look then really deeper into the number, then you can see that. See already here, it leads to differences in terms of rounding. And what does it mean? That means basically when you work with, let's say, for example, a P&L, like a profit loss statement, and you work with full numbers and you cut out decimals, and you don't use round, or you just don't show decimals, then sometimes the big numbers can add up to different, slightly different numbers, only different by like very, very, very slight difference, but still it's let's say on board level and big corporates, people see when numbers don't add up. Yeah. So when you work with round, then usually you can fix that problem with the rounding errors. So that's where round comes in. That's why it's interesting. Okay, so that was actually round. So rounding a number. Let's do sum product. Sum product actually is something that is here especially interesting as soon as we have, let's say, for example, quantities, and we want to come up with the total revenue. Because price times quantity is revenue. Let's say we would have here another column called quantity, and we have here a random number between 1 and 3. Let's say 1 and 10. Then that, let's say, are now the quantities. Pure coincidence. Here actually also, if I press now F9, you can see that these kind of numbers change. Yeah, that's this kind of calculate now effect. So you don't want to have to change the quantities all the time. For us, it is right now only dummy data. So what I want to have, what I want here is actually the pure values. Yeah. So what I do is I copy the data and I say pay special values. Because then, as you can see right now, there's not a formula anymore in there. It's the basic, it's a number, and if I press F9 right now, then nothing changes. Yeah? So now we have here some quantities, and to come up with revenues right now, basically, I can do, I can actually, there are several ways how to do it. Let's use some product to show you how quick it is. And let's say it's the shop price times the sales. Yeah. And you see it's 4,369, let's say, dollars. What you could also have done is come up with here with a revenue column in here. Let's say revenue, and then you can say that's shop price times sales. And if you sum that up, you can already see down here it's 4,369. Either you do sum right now or you do an auto sum. Let's go for this, see it's the same. So sum product actually multiplies arrays, and an array was, for example, the column shop price with the column quantity. Yeah. Okay. So that's sometimes very cool function to make things simple and short. So it was sum product. So tackling the last one, which is rank. Rank gives you basically, based on a set of data, the rank of, for example, the highest or the lowest one. For example, let's take the shop prices, and you want to know what is the most expensive item in terms of price in the shop, what is the second most expensive, the third most expensive, and the least expensive. In that case, you can use a rank function, and let's call it rank by shop price. And what you want to do is you want to do rank, and you want to see the shop price in reference to that data here. In my case, it's now called shop price because I defined a name for that. Otherwise, there would be F2 to F41 in there. And I want to have it descending, so the most expensive one is ranked number 1. The least expensive one gets the last rank. So fill in a 0 for descending order, close the brackets, and I can see that $7 is rank 33 compared to all other items in the shop. Autofill it. What I can see is that the one down here, the Hugo Boss jeans with 65 euros, is the most expensive one. Yeah. So that's actually how rank works. Interesting, for example, if you work with, if you play games with your friends and you track it in Excel, or if you have like a league, a football league, and so on and so forth, and you want to rank it. So the rank is, especially in games, it's very interesting. Okay, that's it. So now we covered all the most important math functions. Okay, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP. What does VLOOKUP do? VLOOKUP basically is a vertical search lookup in a given table, for example, like I have here on the left. Here you can see I have IDs and then product names for that, unit prices, how many I have in stock, on order, and what is kind of like the reorder level. And what might be interesting is if you know like the product ID, for example, let's say Pavlova number 16, that you don't have to look into the list, but that you actually get the data from here. By typing in here the 16 would be cool to see the data directly here. How do we do that? Basically, to know what kind of product is behind ID 16, we do a VLOOKUP. And the lookup value is this 16 here, or this field, and we fix it by pressing F4. Then we want to look up in this table that we are also fixing. F4. for column index number is actually the second one, because the first column is this one, the second this one, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So the second one is the product name. That's why I put in here a 2. And then I put in an exact match and not an approximate match, because we really want to have the exact product name. What that means, or what's the difference here, I can show you in a second. So first, it's like 0 is also the same for false. And then product ID 16 is Pavlova. Yeah. For example, 18 is Canavan Tigers. 19, which you cannot see down there, is not available. Yeah. And now I go back to 18. If I would have put in here a 1 for approximate match, then it still says you Canavan Tigers, and you think, yeah, everything is more or less the same. However, if you fill in now the 19 here, then it will still tell you Canavan Tigers, because it looks then for the next number, and the next number is defined actually as the next small, like the next smaller number that he can find. So he finds then the 18, and it will give you Canavan Tigers, which would be a false result, because product ID 20 is not Canavan Tigers. So please make sure, and that is actually the case in 99%, that you have in here a 0 or false for you want to have an exact match. Yeah. So 18 then for Canavan Tigers. Now the price is actually then the next column. So what I can, for example, do here is copy the formula, go in here, paste the formula, and change it to 3. So that should be 6250 is correct. Then same for in stock. It's the 4th column. Then on order is the 5th column. Mistake here, 5th column. Is it correct? 18, yes. Reorder level is 6th column. Value of inventory is a normal formula, which is price times in stock. Here he doesn't know the value. We'll fix that in a second, and then the value on order is actually the price times the number on order here. So why do I see the value now? That's also like a pretty normal Excel thing that is bugging people when getting data from other countries with other currencies, or where the comma is not a point, and vice versa, because in Europe usually we work with commas here, while in the US you work with a point. How to fix that in that case is basically you don't have to do it manually. You can do another replace here, for example, looking for dollar and replacing it with nothing. 67 replacements. It's a general number, then still doesn't work. So what you can do now is actually replace point with a comma. In your case it might already work. What you can see now here, that actually here there were 2 false replacements. How can I fix that? I actually go back twice, and now what makes sense obviously is first replacing the point with the comma, and then in the next step replacing the dollar with nothing, replace all, close, see, and then all of a sudden I get here proper numbers. I can now of course say again, okay, this is the dollar, and now it looks good. Yeah, now basically formatted data in a way that Excel now knows its numbers. and it's a currency. And now you can also see that the value of the inventory is 3,906. Value in order is nothing, and the price is 62.50. No? Now let's do that for another ID. Let's say take the first one. The price is 18, 39 on stock, reorder level is 10, value of inventory is 324. Let's take one where we order something. Let's take this one. It's product ID number 3. You can see now value of inventory is 100, value on order is 700, and yeah, the VLOOKUP actually gets all the other data automatically based on the product ID. Yes. So text formulas in Excel. To give you a specific example, sometimes we have like name lists, like here, where you have first names and last names together, and you actually want to have it separate because you want to work with last names, or for example, you want to use that Excel list for a basis for then email templates where you only want to use the first names. And the email addresses, for example, you want to find out what is like the most popular email provider. So is it Gmail, is it Yahoo? What is the email provider that the users use the most? And for that kind of problems, you can use text formulas. I put here a couple of formulas. For example, left basically does the following: that takes a text and then based on the amount of characters, so here basically numchars gives you out then from the left the first 4 characters. Right basically does the same from the right, so the last 4 characters, but like the numbers of course purely random. You can also say 6, and then it would be 6 here. Trim actually, what does trim do? If there are spaces at the very beginning or the very end, then they get trimmed away, so they go. Yeah? So basically here there is no space, so nothing changes, but here for John Doe there is actually a space before the D, and if you trim that, then the space is basically gone. So that's for example very important if you have like text or strings in cells that contain spaces and you want to sort that, then usually the ones with the space in the front, they are in the very beginning. But what you want is that they are ordered or sorted in by alphabet, in an alphabetical order. And then in that case you have to trim those kind of cells to ensure that the first cell is always the first letter of the text and not the space. So that here is actually trim. And len is for the length of the text. For example, here it means basically there are 17 characters in that cell. 9 is basically put in the find formula, and I'm looking here for spaces, and he found a space at the 9th position, yeah, in the formula D6, which is basically exactly the space between the end of my first name and the beginning of my last name, so between the S and the uppercase B. It's in position 9. And then there's another function called mid, and then here you can say the start character and then the amount of characters that you want to extract. So here he starts on the 4th character and extracts 4 characters. Yeah, so that's basically then the THIA. And then there's another formula called concatenate, and it basically aggregates or concatenates as many cells as you want. So here I concatenated D6 and E6, and you can see there's basically a new string coming out, which is then the addition of both strings. That's actually also very interesting when you have to let's say first name and last name, and you actually want to have a name. So exactly what we have here in column D, if you want to build that out of a list of first names and last names, you can do it with concatenate. We will do that later actually. Yeah, so this was find, this here is mid, and this is concatenate. So what does it all mean? How does left, right, trim, length, and so on help me to derive first name from last name here? So to derive that now, a little bit of space, put in here first name and here last name, and then a little bit more space. And then basically the idea is to now fill in the first names, which is like Matthias in here and Bellman in here. So to do that, we use a function which is actually a combination of the things that you see on the right. It's, as you know, that length is 17. Then we need something where, let's say we could, for example, say, we can, for example, take left and can say text, and number of charts could be this minus this. Yeah, so find was where the space is and the length is the total length. So if you subtract that, then what you will get is Matthias. No, is the first name. If I do that, then you can see it only works to some extent. Why is that? Because actually we don't need length. We only need n6. That's where the space is. And then the question is, do we need -1 because of the space? Let's check that. Yeah, we need -1, otherwise we would have to trim it to get rid of the space behind the S that was not visible. So now you get values here because he's referring to the field on the right, the cell on the right, which is in here. So that's also another old trick to add up the formulas. Just take basically this formula, and instead of n6 you just fill in that formula, and then you get Matthias, and when you do it now, then it works. So let's do it now for the last name. Here several options. One is of course to say right, and then do something like 17 minus the space, and that's an actually Bellman. Here we have the same problem now, so what I do is M6 is this one, which I put in here without the equal sign, and then find instead of n6. So that's basically then the formula. So write d6 length of d6 minus find the space in d6. You then get all the last names. Yeah. And as I always love the pure values, what you should do actually is then to copy that and paste it as values. So now it's in the pure names. Okay. Let's reverse that actually and check if here it looks like there could be another trim needed, because it looks like there's a space. So let's check that by adding here +1. So now actually there's another space, so that's not right. -1, and now it works. Huh? So if I go up here, then that's not working. But if I go down, it works. So how come? Apparently there is a double, yeah, there's a double space between the names here. See, sometimes you discover these kind of things when you then work with the data. So how could you fix that right now? It's another interesting fix. It's an easy replace. If you find a space, if you find a double space, you replace it with a space. Replace all, 20 replacements. Now you can see that the names here are cut. So I bring down the old formula and now it works. And now I don't have the space anymore. And if I go in here, then you can see there's only one space between the names. Okay. So to finish that, now let's do the other way around. You want to combine first name and last name and build a concatenated name column. So let's call it name again. If I would now use concatenate and concatenate those two, then actually I get a new column with the two strings added together. The problem is there's a space missing. So either you add it behind the first name, but that I think is not super clean Excel formula coding. So what makes more sense, and actually what is my preferred way to work with strings, is to say I want to have that and then have a space and then that. So that's actually then the formula with a space in between. Yeah, and then if I also want to build email addresses, I could also say, for example, here I want to have a point, and I want to have here an @ sign, and then, for example, an email provider. I can also now type a dummy one in, is Gmail. So now you can see it's matthias.berman@gmail.com, and I can build email addresses out of that. Yeah, so working with concatenate is cool, but what I actually recommend is to work with the emperor's end, and then build the kind of new strings that you want to have out of that. Error handling. There is a very popular one which is called circular reference, and basically it comes when you calculate something that is calculated based on another calculation that was initially based on a calculation itself. That sounds weird now, but to give an example, like here there is one hidden, which is actually visible down here. Yeah, circular references in D22. So D22, you see items per order is calculated by the basket size divided by average value per item, and the average value per item is calculated by the basket size divided by the items per order. Yeah, so it's basically in an inherent calculation, it is not possible like that. So in that case, you know that actually in that case the D22 is not the circular. The reason, I mean, it's also a part of that, but the actual mistake is here. In D25 here, it should not be a formula. Here should be a value like, for example, €8 or $8 per item. And then you can see that the items per order is 5, which is 40 divided by 8. What you can also actually do is, if you don't see it directly, okay, now you also get like the circular reference warning. Yeah, and usually you also see these arrows then, that there's circular reference between those two cells, and that's where you have to fix it. So I put in here 8, and then it works. 6 was changed that, so you can see it calculates out of the 3. Okay, so then you have also another very popular Excel error, which is diff0. As usually in documents, it always looks ugly, and it is, for example, here it's a calculation 0 divided by 0, because for some reason there are like 0 lines. What you can do is, when you have a diff0 calculation, is use a formula called isError. And if you do that, then it tells you, yeah, there's an error. So that's actually then, yeah, very obvious. But actually to fix it, you can do something like an if clause. So you can say if this is an error, and you just could see that it said true. So if that is true, then you should do nothing. If there's no error, then he should divide it. Yeah. So now we can see it's empty because there was an error. We can move it now over, and you can see it works. And now if let's say 32 divided by 15, if there would have been numbers in there, like here 10, then you can see that now there comes a value, otherwise it's empty. Yeah, so that's actually pretty cool to make it more, to make it look better and don't have errors in your spreadsheet. Next to diff0, you have another one that is quite common. It's called value. I don't have it in here right now, but for example, if you have something like, just don't make it a date, let's put in like a big number, another big number. If I would add these numbers now in my Excel, it will tell me value, which is caused by the fact that in my Excel the separating sign is a comma and not a point. So basically it's 2 different formats. So the value always shows you that apparently something with the format is not right. He thinks that this is text, but it's a number. So what you can do is, for example, that when you get the value, you know it's different format, and then you can see here in that case, for example, that you have to replace the point with a comma, and then all of a sudden it works, and the value error is gone. Okay, so these are like the most common Excel errors. Then there's another cool function that you should know. It's called trace dependence. That is in formulas, and then trace dependence or trace precedence. So as you can see already here, it shows the errors that indicate what cells affect the value of the currently selected cell, and the other one is the other way around. So what cells are affected by the value of the current selected cell. If I, for example, say